Yesterday, I presented 2 confessions, and the feedback I got that I'm going to try to incorporate today are 1, talk slower, 2, emote more. So last night, I spent a lot of time watching a bunch of YouTube videos on how to act, so I think we're going to nail it. So here's our DevOps confession for today. Many years ago, I was in charge of a large technology organization that was responsible for the development and operations for a huge mission-critical service that our company was entirely reliant upon. When these systems go down, the entire money machine stops. It affected order entry, order administration. In fact, tens of thousands of employees couldn't do their daily work, and we couldn't fulfill our promises to our customers. So one day, we had a massive outage that brought the whole thing down. Everybody was freaking out, rightly so, because tens of thousands of employees couldn't get their work done. And our CTO was freaking out, the SVP of infrastructure was freaking out, and my teams were in the middle of it. And hours later, we get everything back up and running. So by that time, it became pretty obvious what happened. A network engineer had pasted the wrong configuration file into a production router, and it took the entire network down. The reaction from the SVP and CTO was this: fire this person. The root cause was human error, and so therefore you eliminate the person, and therefore we eliminate the source of error. And they were whipping everybody up into a frenzy, calling for heads to roll. So, of course, like many in this community, we're followers of the safety culture, the work of Dr. Sidney Dekker, Dr. Richard Cook, and John Allspaw. We know and we get comfort that any comfort we get that we can identify a single root cause is a fallacy, because we can always ask what caused that root cause and what caused that, and eventually we get to the Big Bang. It's rarely that simple. So I do some digging because I'm trying to build up the ammo to build up the case that we shouldn't fire the network engineer. And this is what I learned. The network engineer had actually been doing all-nighters for nearly a week, and that's on top of working all day. Why would he be doing this? It's because we were preparing for a major launch, and we were entering a whole set of new global markets. Every day, this engineer was working all day long, and then he would go back home, set his alarm for midnight. He would go back home, set his alarm for midnight, because he wanted to be awake so that he could help the launch teams do their work that was happening overseas. He didn't want to let those teams down. His managers actually told him to take a day off. Don't come in on Friday. You have to get some time to recover. But it turns out that he kept waking up in the middle of the night, worried about all the things that he'd missed. And by the way, personally speaking, I know that feeling. When your adrenal system is so screwed up because you're stressed all the time, taking a day off doesn't help. Your body is still wired for that fight or flight response. In fact, in the early days of this conference, it was exactly like that. For almost a week after the conference ended, I would still wake up in the middle of the night, replaying the events in the head that all need to happen in order for the conference to be a success. Right? So I know that feeling. So this engineer was also waking up in the middle of the night, panicking that he had missed something important, some promise he had made to the launch teams that were working overseas. So in this mindset, in this frenzy, in this panic, he opens up his laptop. Oh, I'm gesturing. He opens up his laptop. He pulls up all the countless terminal windows, copies and pastes the configuration file into the editor, and hits save. You know what's coming, right? He had pasted the configuration file into the wrong window. It wasn't the test router like he thought. It was the global production router. And who here doesn't know that feeling of ice in your veins freezing up when you realize you had typed the wrong thing and you know that it's too late to do anything about it? For things like this, there is no undo button. In fact, Jeffrey Snover once tweeted out about how, when he was at Digital as a young engineer, he accidentally deleted the entire source code repo that supported all of the Digital VMS or Ultrix operating system. He said he didn't know what to do, and he actually crawled underneath his desk. So, when this outage is happening, we quickly diagnose it, and we discover quickly what happened. And of course, the natural response of the organization is to blame him. But here are the questions that are going through my head. How did we allow ourselves to get in the position of being so reliant on this one person? He was like Brent in the Phoenix Project, and we created this situation that made life horrible for Brent. He always had to wear a pager. He couldn't go on vacations without that pager. And somehow, we created the conditions where he couldn't even take a forced day off without him waking up in the middle of the night, he feeling overwhelmed by his sense of obligations to the teams that happened to be depending on him. So using the language of Dr. Maslach that was introduced to us yesterday, I would say we screwed up a couple of things: workload, control, community, and fairness. So the easy things that we could have done is pairing him with another person, so that by pairing, another person could share and help do the work. And maybe for those type of critical operations that are so risky, we should just say, we should never put one person in a situation where they can do the work alone, especially not in the middle of the night, especially when you haven't gotten sleep for nearly a week. So in this case, I managed to convince people that we shouldn't fire that network engineer. And I actually thought that I was actually making headway in changing how our leadership viewed how to fairly respond to accidents and outages like this. And how wrong I was. Because a couple of weeks later, we had another major incident that was also hugely disruptive. This time, it only affected 1/3 of our employees that couldn't do their daily work. But unlike last time, I knew exactly what happened, because the CTO and the SVP of infrastructure, the same people who ordered me to try to fire the network engineer last time, they were the people who ordered me to push out a security patch to all our infrastructure. Everyone on my team said this was a terrible idea. For days, we fought the decision, but I was steamrollered by my bosses. We did our best, and we pushed out the patch on their schedule. And here's what happened when we pushed the button. That's not really funny, but okay, we ended up bricking thousands of critical devices in hundreds of locations. To get them back up and running, we had to create a video to show non-technical in-store employees how to create a bootable USB device. Because we needed to create a new boot image in order to get those systems back in running. We had to show them how to boot these critical systems into recovery mode. And oh, by the way, this actually required us to give hundreds of in-store employees the BIOS password to our servers. Great for security, right? So now I'm in a meeting with the CTO and the SVP of infrastructure, and here is the first thing they say to me: how could you let this happen? Your teams are clearly incompetent. So I learned quickly that these people are telling all the other leaders in the organization about how bad my teams are and how we couldn't be trusted to do important work. And here's what really bothered me. They took no responsibility for their role in the outage, that the decision to push out the patch and the schedule to push out the patch was theirs. This felt to me incredibly unfair, and you can't imagine how much more difficult it was for me to push the agenda of things that I thought were important when I was being actively undermined by these people. But then things got really bad. I then discovered that there was going to be a reorg, and that one of them was going to be my boss. And I think that is when I decided that it was time for me to leave. So on the one hand, dealing with all these things builds up a lot of personal resilience, but I felt very conflicted. I didn't really want to leave because I was worried what that would look like on my resume. But eventually, it became so clear that my values didn't align with theirs, and more importantly, there was absolutely nothing that I could learn from them. It was also difficult for me to accept that as hard as I tried, I couldn't buffer my teams from all of this madness. And as hard as I tried, it affected their daily work too. So, like in the previous confession, or one of them, I'm going to share how I feel now. I'm actually working somewhere where I love the work. I'm working on amazing things, and I feel like I'm making a hugely impactful contribution to the organization that everybody recognizes. And I am on a mission, like Gene, where I'm trying to understand how to get conservative technology leadership on board and how to better influence them. I want to understand how I can better partner with business leadership, because I think those skills are probably the most important skills for me to learn. And I am very excited about this journey. So, by the way, could everyone give a round of applause for that the person? Okay, so here's my reflection on this. I realized that there is some dissonance because the story from yesterday was about perseverance, right? The person stuck it out, and as was verbalized in the story, the lessons learned during that journey, this person considers the most important lessons that will help them for the rest of the career. This one is about bailing out, right? So one might observe that those are somewhat contradictory, but I think that's sort of life, right? Life is full of contradictions, and so it depends. But I would like to underscore this as one of the reasons why I think it's so important that we better understand how to span the business and technology divide. And I think the way that we avoid situations like this is that we have to show that there is a better way of working, and it's not just to be nice. Right? It's actually better for the organization, it's better for outcomes, it's better for organizational performance, it's better for engagement, and it just also happens to be great for employees who happen to be human beings. So we have more great programming to support this mission tomorrow that I'll talk to you more about. So with that, thank you so much. And I think there's a slide. If you have a story that you think is relevant, and also for whatever reason, just direct message me on Slack, and I would love to talk. So thank you so much. See you at, I have no idea what's going on. Can someone we'll join here later for plenary programming this afternoon. Thank you.